Welcome to Singles Club. Once again, I'm your host, Ed, and I'm joined by Alex.
Hello there.
Now, this time we're going to be covering a group called Shabazz Palaces and their new single. Shabazz Palaces are an experimental hip-hop and rap vehicle fronted by Ishmael Butler, who you may or may not be familiar with from the early 90s hip-hop outfit Diggable Planet's really underrated, overlooked group.
All right, really?
Yeah, well, we'll get onto this in a second, but Alex has not actually heard any Shabazz Palaces music before, so this should be a particularly interesting installment of Singles Club.
Yeah.
So Shabazz Palaces are set to release their third album, titled Quasar's Born on a Gangster Star. Sick fucking title. Really great cover artwork on this thing as well.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And it's the follow-up to the last two records, the first of which their great, atmospheric, soulful, experimental debut album, Black Up. And then its bizarre, paradoxical, segmented follow-up, Leze Majesty, which is an album that I wasn't really warm on at first, but I've been listening to it a lot recently, actually. It's about 3 years old now, and it genuinely did take a few years to really warm up to that record, because it was so baffling. And the new single, titled Shine a Light, has me just as baffled as their last project, but perhaps not for the reasons you'd expect. As I mentioned, I'm joined by Alex, who's had no prior interaction with Shabazz Palace's music, so I figured, Alex, do you want to start us off on this track? What are your thoughts?
Okay, well, I always appreciate hip-hop with more of a grand orchestral vibe, as it's something a lot of, modern rap in general doesn't have. There was some point in hip-hop, I'm not too sure when, maybe early 2000s-ish, where more orchestral vibes were more common, but they've kind of gone down a bit. But it's used really welcomely here and keeps a quite catchy undertone throughout. If you sample a good orchestral thing, that could be as catchy as anything else.
What surprised me the most about this track, just to get out of the way immediately, is how almost traditional it feels by Shabazz Palace's standards. And obviously you wouldn't know this, Alex, from not hearing their other records,
right.
But their other records were so unreadable in a sense of how have they made this sound? Where is this sampled from? What's going on? Whereas here, it's a lot clearer. I mean, I couldn't identify the sample.
No.
Whether it's a sample or not, it's still a very readable part of the instrumental, because it may not even be a sample. It may be something that they've crafted themselves. I wouldn't put it past them, to be honest, from the credits that they've had on their records so far.
There are some parts to the instrumental where I'm not sure if it is a sample or live instrumentation. I did actually get that from this. Right,
and that's what I really love about this track, is it melds together all the aspects of it really well. Initially I was a bit disappointed by this track, because I was really hoping for something that was very experimental sounding, very mind-boggling, and instead I got this track that is really rooted in hip-hop traditionalism. I feel like hip-hop traditionalists who are into their Nas's, into their Eric B. and Rakims, into their Wu-Tang, could really get a lot out of this track. And it's the first hip-hop track in a while that's felt this traditional that I've really enjoyed quite a lot. And it's mostly thanks to how updated and modern the production feels. I mean, there's some awesome vocal effects on this thing. Really great hook, which has this really nice vocoded vocal, basically just singing Shine a Light over and over again.
Yeah, it's a good hook.
I mean, there's only really one verse on this track.
Yeah, I did notice that. That was pretty weird to me.
I mean, Ish Butler, who formerly went under the name Palacia Lazaro, is the front man and the main brain of Shabazz Palaces. Yeah. And here, his presence isn't felt all that much. I mean, when I think about what I remember from this track, it's mainly the hook, which is sung by a feature. I can't recall the name of the feature, I'm afraid, right now, but it doesn't really matter.
No.
It's early days on Singles Club. Please don't hold it against us. But
yeah, we'll soon be the biggest pros on singles in the game.
Yeah. Best single reviewers in the game.
Definitely. As an introduction single, I couldn't ask for much more, I feel like. Especially now that I know that this is like quite a... definitely a more accessible read into what Shabazz Palaces are all about. So, I don't know, I feel like this is like unintentionally by you, because you probably didn't know it was going to be this different and less in-depth than their other stuff, but yeah, I felt like this was a good place for me to get a sort of grip on what they were like, even if this isn't necessarily what they're like on their past ones.
I'm not making a direct comparison here, but it's kind of how Death Grips do things in terms of consistently surprising people with how their new music sounds. I feel like Shabazz Palaces, who haven't been nearly as prolific as Death Grips, who've put out 10 albums in the last 5 years? Last like 7 years. Shabazz Palaces, this is only their third album. Their first one came out, I think, in 2011, then its follow-up was 2014, and right on schedule, we're getting another one this year. And with each new release, they've surprised me with the sound. I mean, this kind of returns to the very soulful style that they embraced on the first album that was kind of almost but not completely removed from their second record. But it still feels very fresh and very, very, very new for them. I mean, it is very rooted in traditional hip-hop, but it's certainly a unique track with the way Butler flows on this thing. I mean, I found his verse very unreadable. I don't know about you, Alex.
There was a part of this song, the beat. Now, I'm not very good at analysing how beats work. I don't know anything about timing or phrasing on beats or drums or anything. But okay, this might sound like a complete amateur talking, but it felt like every second beat builded and retracted somewhat. Not sure if that's how it actually was intended, but it felt like it went stronger, lighter, stronger to add some nice forward propelling weight to the song. That's Definitely. What I felt like. That was quite cool.
This was a great choice for first single, I'd say, based on that. Even if there's not much to read into lyrically, it's a very good, potentially, announcement of what this album will sound like. Although, the rest of the album could sound completely different. It wouldn't be the first time a single has fooled us. I mean, we've listened to enough music at this point.
Definitely.
I'm really excited for this new record. Alex, you should definitely go back and check out their first two albums, maybe looking at their sophomore LP, Leze Majesty, with a more retroactive, this is what it was like at the time type thing. We'll make that album more accessible to you, but it is certainly one of the weirder hip-hop albums I've heard this decade.
All right.
But this new one, whether it's going to be completely rooted in hip-hop traditionalism or whether it's going to continue to shock and surprise me even after hearing this kind of mind-boggling single, we'll have to see. But to conclude, would you recommend this single, Alex?
Well, Shabazz Palaces fans have probably already heard this. This is going to be a common thing. I mean, people who have heard the single, I don't think they're coming to album or single reviews. We could do album reviews, but that's in the future. But single reviews without hearing the single. If you're coming to us for recommendations for singles to listen to, I mean, yes, you should try this out. But you probably already heard it. But yes, I mean, any hip-hop fan, I don't think there's any pretension that you have to be a hip-hop fan to enjoy this. I think it has enough of a soul sort of vibe to it that you could kind of get into it if you just even have just a vague liking of pop. It's not that hard to get into, and yeah, I'm hyped to try the album, and their past work's out as well now.
I pretty much agree with all of that. Alex enjoyed this track a lot. I mean, he's not heard their other projects, and I think that makes perfect sense. I mean, I picked this single for us to review before either of us had heard it.
Yeah.
And I was actually expecting something a lot more left field. But despite that, it's not a put down. I think on its own merits, it's a very good track, and it's one of the most accessible tracks Shabazz Palaces has ever put out. Not to say it's too simple or anything like that. But in terms of the instrumental, it's one of the most readable tracks they've put out in a long while, actually, probably since their debut. So I highly recommend this cut, whether you've heard Shabazz Palaces or not, and I anticipate their new album with much anticipation. So, yeah, thanks for joining us again, guys. You can find Alex on Busted Speakers podcast. I'll link them in the description.
Thank you.
This has been your captain, Ed, signing off.
And the first mate, signing off as well.